I'd like to welcome everybody out to the Herriman City Council and Planning Commission Joint Work Meeting, Wednesday, May 29th, 2019. We're going to go along the agenda, but before we jump into that, I was asked to allow introduction of some of the new planning commissioners, and we can just go around and do that. And if we want to introduce anyone else or how you want to do that, Bryn, but just the new planning commissioners.
We can have everybody.
Everybody?
Just
Okay.
everybody, yeah.
So we'll start at the end with you.
Me, I'm Bryn. I'm planning staff.
Welcome.
Planning staff, and this is our institutional knowledge right here. All in one body or a body and a half, right?
Yeah.
So I'm Michael Moore, I'm the planning director.
I'm Colby Alverson, I'm planning commissioner alternate.
I'm Sherry Orm, I'm on this,
Clint Smith on the city council.
Chris Berbert on the planning commission and acting chair.
Adam Jacobson, I'm a planning commissioner.
I'm Heather Garcia, and I am on the Planning Commission as an alternate.
I'm Joy Kaseke, and I am on the Planning Commission as an alternate.
Jackson Ferguson, on the planning commission.
Brody Euripian, planning commissioner.
Thank you, guys. Then we'll jump into approval of minutes for January 30th, 2019 joint work meeting. All in favor?
Motion to
Oh,
approve.
motion to approve?
Approve
Motion to
first.
approve?
I'll second that.
Clint, second. Brody, all in favor?
Aye.
And then we'll move on to item 1.2, which is Open and Public Meetings Act training by John Brems.
Well, are you, oh, is this on? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Just talk
Talk? I can't talk without a microphone.
with that.
It's the enter button?
Yep.
So how do I go back to the first?
What they're seeing is different than what you're seeing. They're seeing that
Okay, so where's the first slide?
right there.
Oh, that's not my first slide.
Well, that's the first slide. It was the same thing, so I.
You didn't copy it?
That's the first one.
Okay. Hello? Hello? Doesn't work. All right. Welcome to the exciting subject of open meeting training for the new members of the Planning Commission. You'll hear this many times, and the City Council's heard it. And for the visitors, you'll enjoy this presentation. It is just great. All right, so Utah law requires that each public body be trained. It's the responsibility of the chair of the public body to train. And this is your training. The statute that governs Open Meetings Act sets forth a policy that the act provides it as the intent that political subdivisions take their actions openly and conduct their deliberations openly. So you do it in the open, you do it in public. It's transparency. And it's really transparency versus efficiency. It's not intended to be efficient, it's intended to be transparent. Government on its best day is not efficient, but. All right, general rule is that all actions taken by the public body are done in an open meeting unless it's closed for a specific reason. So some of the important parts of this are definitions. So what is a meeting? A meeting is defined as convening of a public body with a quorum, in this case 3 for the council and 4 for the planning commission, for the purpose of discussing or acting upon matters over which the public body has jurisdiction. And a meeting does not include a chance encounter. So if you run into each other somewhere, or 3 or 4 of you run into each other somewhere, it's not necessarily a meeting, but it might be, and we'll get there in a minute. So a public body must give 24 hours advance notice of the meeting and what's on the agenda. And Jackie and or Wendy do this. That's the reason for the agenda. That's what you get right here. This is that 24-hour notice. We do it more than 24 hours in advance. And then on an annual basis, the city council in January approved your annual meeting schedule and the planning commission annual meeting schedule, and we published it in the paper. Probably didn't know that, but we did it. So the notice requires the meeting agenda, date, time, place, and place of the meeting, which is all on the agenda. And the notice has to be specific enough to put the public on notice what's being discussed. So if it's not on the agenda, but it's brought up by the public, can it be discussed? So the council chair or commission chair may, in his or her discretion, discuss a topic that is raised by the public, and I put public in red because that's the important thing. If it's brought up by members of the planning commission or the city council, it doesn't fall under this exception. You can discuss it, but you can't make a decision on it. The Open Meetings Act requires written minutes, and the approved written minutes are the official record taken of the meeting. They're also recorded. No, let me go back. I don't want to get quite there yet. Back is that way? Nope. Back is up. No, back is sideways. Back is which way? Oh, that's sideways.
Yeah.
Okay, they're right. So if you have a recording, which we have, and written minutes, and they're in conflict, which one do you think is the winner? The written record, the written minutes, even if they're not exactly the same. Now, some court may say, oh, we don't believe that, it's not what the statute says, but
Is that because the minutes are ratified?
They're approved.
Reviewed and approved?
yes, that's why they become the official record, and you have to keep them forever. Jackie and Wendy keep them forever in their forever box, right? All right, closed meetings may be held by the council, but not the commission, except in one specific circumstance, which I'll talk to you about later. For only these specific purposes. They're very narrow, and you've heard me in our closed meetings, sometimes I say we're getting out of bounds, we gotta bring it back, or I keep bringing the issue back up that we're talking about. So you discuss the character, personal competency, physical or mental health of an individual. This isn't necessarily personnel issues in general, but it's capacity or individual capacity of a person, like me. Discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation. Purchase or exchange or lease of real property, sell a real property. And this is the one where the planning commission can go into a closed meeting, is when the council or the commission is acting in a judicial or quasi-judicial capacity. That's your deliberation. You get to go into a closed meeting and deliberate and direct the decision to be written, or however you want to deal with that. We've done this a couple times in the planning commission, those of you that have been on that long enough. And the city council really doesn't act in that judicial capacity. You don't want to, we don't want you to. Minutes and recordings of a closed meeting are protected records under grandma. So basically what that means is if you get information in a closed meeting, you can't disclose it unless the body authorizes you to disclose it. And it's a crime to disclose it. So if you find out something in a closed meeting, you can't tell anybody unless that body says it's okay, or it's a crime. You record your closed meetings except if you're talking about an individual, personal competency, and then in that case, the chair of that meeting has to sign a sworn statement, which Jackie and or Wendy provide, and you sign it. It says, we didn't talk about anything else but that. Now, this is a recent addition of about 2 years ago, and the act specifically provides that nothing in this chapter, meaning the chapter of the Open Meetings Act, shall be construed to restrict a member of a public body from transmitting an electronic message to other members of the public body at a time when the public body is not convened in an open meeting. So if you want to do a group text, you can do that. If you want to blast out an email to all the members of the city council, you can do that. Now, this is not, it's not intuitive. They'll let you do it electronically, but you can't do it in person. But that's the rule.
Maybe because you can grandma that possibly. If it was only if it's on city council.
Yeah, I can't figure out what their wisdom was. But that's what they put in there, so that's what it is. All right, let's do a couple case studies. This will kind of bring specifics. So, you've all been taught to shop locally. And 3 council members or 4 commissioners run into each other at Smith's. And one of the council members or commissioners starts discussing the anthem development. Whoa. Is that okay? Or is it not okay? Well, here's what I think. This is a chance meeting and not technically a violation, but it may result in a violation depending upon what you do. So, this is my recommendation. Recommend that it's not an appropriate forum to discuss it. Change the subject or continue shopping. Walk away. You may not, this is when it looks like it turns into a meeting, discuss the matter and indicate how you will vote. Now, for the Planning Commission, there's another level of rules. This is a commission caveat. You have rules of procedure that you have to comply with. And this may be an ex parte communication and be a violation of the commission rules of procedure. But be careful. We'll talk about, I'll talk in a minute about, no, I want to go back. So here's what your rules say. Ex parte communication. No member of the commission shall have any ex parte discussion regarding an administrative land use application or a rezone application pending before the commission. Ex parte communication means any communication, including but not limited to electronic or social media communication with interested parties of an administrative land use application or a rezone application pending before the commission prior to the commission reaching its final decision. So, if one of these guys want to talk to the planning commission, that's pretty clear ex parte communication. And they really shouldn't do it. They know better, right, Chris?
It's not my first time hearing this.
And the question is it far enough, is it ex parte communication if you talk directly to a planning commissioner? We've had this discussion among the 3 of us, and we think it's probably a problem. Just don't do it. But if you do it, you might want to disclose it in the meeting that you've had this discussion with my fellow planning commissioner, and here's what we discussed. So everybody has the same amount of information. Case study 2. Oh, I went the wrong way.
Hey, John, while you're talking about that one, just for some of the newer planning commissioners, since we do have programs that allow you as a neighbor, if something's going on in your neighborhood, that invites you to go, it can apply to that.
Don't go.
But don't go. We've had that discussion with other planning commissioners in the past where somebody's developing in their subdivision, right next to their subdivision. Your time to talk would be at the planning commission meeting, not by going to the community event. So that gets confusing because you get a letter and it says, as a citizen, you can go to it. So just be aware of that.
So this would be my recommendation. If you Facebook and get on Facebook, don't talk about anything you're doing in the planning commission. Just a bad idea. I wouldn't text anybody about what you're doing in the planning commission, and I wouldn't email anybody and I wouldn't tweet it either.
And John,
If anybody would follow you, but,
and John,
Yeah.
as soon as someone, a developer or a builder puts an application in, that becomes a time we can no longer talk about anything.
that's right, until the planning commission has made its decision. Now, our rules are fairly broad. They cover administrative and legislative. So if it's a rezone, you still can't talk about it. You're not the final decision maker, but it's an ex parte communication. Word to the wise, just don't do it. I mean, don't be tempted to put something on Facebook that you don't like the Anthem development. And if it's on an application and you say that, bad. All right, second case study. While attending a local worship service, somebody corners you and wants to talk about Anthem development. Is this a problem? Well, for the city council, probably not, because you don't have ex parte communication. So you may discuss the matter as you deem appropriate, council members. But there's the planning commission caveat. It will probably be ex parte communication if it's in the application process. So if the application's been made, until you make your decision or make your recommendation. Number 3, during the citizen comment time, a citizen addresses the council commission regarding the Anthem development that is not on the agenda. One of the members wants to talk about it. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay, but you can't make a decision because it's not on the agenda. And you can't vote on it because it's not on the agenda. Oh, did I have the planning commission caveat there? Okay, I went too fast, but you saw it. Just be careful of ex parte communication because those are the rules you have to live by, planning commission. All right, so you receive a group text from another council member or commissioner that includes all the council members or commissioners asking your position on Anthem development. Can you respond? The city council can, because of this, the statute that specifically says you can. So you can really respond and engage in an electronic debate that you can't do in person. Just is. But it appears to violate the spirit of the act, but not necessarily the letter of the act, because the letter accepts it. Now, if you're in a meeting and you're texting your fellow councilman, how are you going to vote on this?
That's awesome.
That's not one of those exceptions. Or if you did it.
So you're saying it's a violation if we're texting each other during meetings?
Yes.
If it's a quorum, if you do more than 3, yes.
So, but between one and another wouldn't necessarily be a violation?
It would not be a violation, but I don't think it's a good idea.
Also looks bad. Since we recorded.
Or better, just let's not do it, right?
Yeah, just turn your phone off while you're up there. Even better. Because sometimes people are watching you and they're going to see that you're texting or something, and they'll say, well, you're not listening to us. Commission caveat again. This may be an ex parte communication in violation of the commission rules. And it also violates the spirit of the act. You've been trained.
John,
Let's go this way.
John, can you talk a little bit about the council communicating with the planning commission? I mean, again, that's still ex parte contact,
city council should not be talking to the planning commission.
About applications.
Because it's the same as a developer, except you may just have a different position on it.
About specific things, like we could talk to them about, like, we were just talking a little bit about a policy or something like that.
You can talk to them about a policy, or you can say, what kind of ordinances should we change in the future, or what policy direction should we talk about? But if it's an application, please don't put the planning commission in that.
We may have a couple
Position.
ideas about what you want to change.
What's that?
What you want to change and add as ordinances, we may have a couple ideas.
Yeah.
We could talk to them about that, we just don't want to talk about anything that's
If
specific.
it's an application, it's
Yeah, I don't think.
taboo,
Yeah,
but
this
if
is
it's general
generic
policy,
things, policy.
Yeah.
I know we've gotten better at this, but like the emails of applications before the meeting where a developer submits it last minute. I know we've gotten better at not doing that. Or a citizen has a comment. Are we good there? Are we
On
finally?
something that's not public hearings.
well, they shouldn't be sending them to you, they should be sending them to the city.
I agreed, but in the past we were having
We have
that.
had
And
this come up.
why we had this training, I wanted to
So
ask
they send it
this.
to us, and then-
So they send it to them, and we've had over the years where they'll include us occasionally, and it makes it almost a bind where you can't act on it because it's information. I don't know. I wanted to hear your opinion on that.
I've lost you.
So if the planning staff gets an email from the developer of an updated plan,
Is this a conditional use or a rezone?
all.
Conditional use.
Yes.
It's a conditional use.
Oh,
Sure.
It's a rezon, it's a hearing, so it's a little bit different. So it's a conditional
If
use.
it's a rezone.
subdivision
If
application.
it's a rezone, everything gets in, basically. If it's a conditional use, and we've talked about this before, I don't even think you should take public comment, because they can't do
And
anything.
we don't anymore.
We don't anymore, but we have seen emails that come through, and that's where it feels like, that's when it opens up that public comment is, a person will submit an email, and they get through because they submitted an email, but we won't take public comment, so that's what I'm trying to say.
Delete.
I'm good with
So-
that, I just wanted to,
So let's say that the emails aren't coming to the city staff. Can they obviously read through them and say, so there's a couple other things that you may want to think about if you see points from them?
Or we've
But don't
heard.
bring it up that it's,
I'd let the city
Like,
staff be your
they
filter,
can be the
because,
filter.
you know, it's
Yeah.
a double-edged sword, because they really can't, they really don't have a point, well, let me say this. maybe- Politically correct. You really can't turn down a conditional use very often, and most of the time it's public clamor. And staff can sort through that and say, oh, we missed this point, that's probably not public clamor.
fair. So we shouldn't see any emails, basically, bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You've been trained.
Thank you, John. We're gonna move on to item 1.3, which is a discussion of Hidden Oaks Development Agreement, which Ivory Homes will help out with that. And if you don't mind introducing yourself, because we don't know everybody.
Yeah. So my name is Chris Gambroulis. I'm the president of Ivory Development. And with me is Dan Reeves. He is the development manager or vice president of development for Perry Homes. So several months ago, Ivory Homes and Perry Homes got together, and we have purchased a good portion of the Dancy property known as Hidden Oaks. So currently it's pods 1, 20, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So along Herriman Highway and then up towards the east, surrounding the school site. We have a long-standing relationship with Perry Homes and their leadership, and I've known Dan for many years. And we're happy to be in a project with them because they have similar culture and they're a good operator, they're a good home builder. In a meeting last week, we had with Michael and Bryn and Gordon. We brought up this question because there's some interesting language in the development agreement. I know that was hammered out. I know it took a long time and was brain numbing, and I can appreciate that. Not here to reopen this development agreement to change it in anything in its entirety. But the provision in the development agreement currently allows us to go down below 60 feet of frontage if we have depth, but in most of the pods that I just described for you, everything except for pod 1, the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. Well, most of those lots are about 100 feet deep. What that creates is, so this is an exhibit that we did internally, just to give you a sense. So these are all 6,000 square foot lots. These are 8s, and these are 7s. And the challenge is that, if along this area here where there's more depth, Dan can skinny those lots up to 45 feet wide as long as he's over 6,000 square feet. But our first phase that we're doing is over here, and most of those lots are about 100 feet deep, which creates a situation where almost all the lots are 60 by 100, and we don't get the variety of housing that we desire to get. It makes it very challenging to get third-car garages on 60-foot wide lots. If we had some flexibility to drop below the 6,000, stay within the 45 feet of frontage, but the average in pod 1, for instance, is still actually ends up staying because we're not adding units. So here's pod 1, or this is pod 1, part 4, our first phase. And this gives you an idea of what it looks like blown up, but where it is in context. This is under the current development agreement to do the 30 lots. I have 3 lots that fit a third-car garage. If we have flexibility to drop below the 6,000 square foot number, stay at 45 feet, which is already baked into the development agreement, then I'm stealing footage from a 60-foot wide lot, but putting it on and creating a 72-foot wide lot or an 80-foot wide lot, which opens it up for ramblers and 3-car garages. What we don't want to see, which I'm nervous about here, is that we're just going to have a lot of 2-story homes with 2-car garages, and we won't really get the housing variety. The third-car garages are a nice upgrade, and it's nice to be able to offer that. It's incredibly challenging. So in this scenario, I have 3. If I stay within those guidelines of no narrower than 45, my square footage is 6539 in both cases because it's the same number of lots in the same land area. So my average square footage hasn't changed. I haven't added any lots, and I haven't dropped any lots. But in this case, I have 16 lots that fit a third-car garage, one of our standard homes. So Dan and I are here. We mentioned this to Gordon and Bren and Michael when we met with them last week. And I said, look, we don't want to burn a lot of anyone's time. So they put us on the agenda tonight, which we appreciate. And what we'd like to know is if you're open to this. If you're not, that's okay. We're going to move forward. We really think this would offer buyers and our companies create a lot of variety within these pods. And we're asking if that's something that you would consider doing so that we can work with Gordon and John and Bryn to come back with some language that would be a tweak to the development agreement. Did I miss anything, Dan?
No. Pretty much covers it.
But this is something both of our companies would like to do.
You can go back to the first slide. The one with the ranges. So
Is that the one?
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, specifically pod 4 right here, yeah.
So I think, in my opinion, this is just me, that's why we were hoping that you'd be more on the 6 to 10,000 square foot lots. And so I know you're trying to optimize the number of lots, but that's why we put in that range. I understand what you're trying to do, but I think in my mind you should lose more lots than if that's the
Yeah, and we're not going to do that.
I would second that. I think that I replied to you on the email several weeks ago that it's simple. If you want to put 3-car garage, drop a lot.
Yeah.
It's not that we're
Well, no, it's the same number.
Right, but you could have one less and still meet the 6,000 and have bigger lots.
Yeah.
You could have some variety if you'll be flexible on the number. And you're asking us to be flexible on the size, and I'm saying to you, be flexible on the number and add some variety in there.
And
If I have
that's,
more flexibility in moving lots around and I didn't have to have a net loss, then, and I could move some, if I could take some lots out of here and move them to another pod and have more flexibility that way.
so when, who did this one?
Tim Self.
When Tim brought this in, that was the discussion, is that that's why there was the minimum maximum. So in some areas, you might be a little tighter, closer to 6,000, and in some areas, you might be tighter to the higher end, which is why why even the range was so dramatic. And I actually remember discussing these and having the concern that I'm bringing up right now was that I was worried that having 6,000 would actually make it so you put 6,000 only. You're doing exactly what my fear was. And so in this discussion, I thought we were gonna get more trading around so that you could, I understand you only bought what you bought, I get that. But that was the discussion initially.
Sure.
Is to use other pods to trade around sizes than to come back and adjust to maximize lots.
And you're simply out in an area where almost everything around you is 10,000 square foot minimum. So it's like, in my opinion, it was way too small anyway, so then to ask for even smaller to me is beyond what I'm willing to compromise on, but that's just only my opinion.
A couple points from me. One, I like the idea of variety and flexibility in house styles and house plans and what lots can accommodate. So I am in favor of doing that, but to the points that have already been made, the reason, which was, remember this was after a referendum and a whole lot of pain to get this back to where we could even agree on it and get it passed. All of the discussion obviously centered around lot size and density overall in there. And to Adam's point, we fought really hard to really spell this out the way we did, that of those, a minimum of 6,000, but the range of 6 to 10. So again, that we could get that variety in there, but that whoever developed that didn't just come in and do just honestly what's happening, and that is going back to the minimum to maximize. Now I get that that's how you maximize profits and all that, being in the business world. Certainly everyone's going to want to take advantage of that, but my goal in the discussions that we had, both from the planning commission side when I was there and now on the council side, was just that. The flexibility was to come really from the developer in there and saying minimum is 6. We're going to give you flexibility to do those things in there, but that's to go 6 to 10,000, and it would come at a net loss in terms of maximum density in there. Again, I love the idea of being able to have flexibility. The last thing I want is just the same thing, one after the other, and you don't get that variety and that feel in a neighborhood, which I know Ivory and Prairie both is really kind of known for it, but really giving some variety. But all echo what's been said here, I'm not willing to go below the 6,000 in this area. I believe that needs to come through increasing lot sizes above the 6,000 to accommodate those, and reducing some density in order to make that happen.
That's also why we capped, if I remember, the actual number of units for the entirety,
Yes.
so that you could trade between pods.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're,
That can be transferred between,
yeah, the last pod will be the one that has the most limitations on it.
Yeah, well, it's true.
It'll be the
And-
biggest lots.
And we're not, we have no agreement on anything west of 7300 West. It's everything east of 7300 West is a joint venture with Perry. The challenge, the challenge for us is the Dancy sold us the plan with the lots platted and sold it to us per lot. And, so
That's why you're stuck, I get it.
that's why we're kind of stuck. So, I understand we can lose lots, and I get that. If we don't have to lose and the product type gets better though, you know, I mean, I don't know,
I
the
think
product.
what we're trying to say
Say
is
it
that
does.
for us, lot size is part of the product type.
Yeah.
And so for us, the minimum lot size is a minimum
Nope,
lot
we
size.
get it. Yeah.
So,
Because I think the community loses at that point, is the point, is that was the whole discussion for ad nauseam about these lot sizes, and the community
A
loses.
very public
I
discussion.
mean, the community loses when you just do cracker box stuff, houses too, you
Yeah.
know, but, we're hopeful, but suspicious that that's how it would go. Whatever hits the minimum is where everybody wants, it's where everyone
Yeah.
wants to go.
Yeah, well, we,
So they, just so I understand, they developed these pods, I can't remember which ones, I don't remember seeing these pods come in for planning commission approval.
We did, the site, this basic
This is
pod
all
plan
we
was
approved.
approved.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so no
this is all-
layout was, and then there's a range in each of the,
to understand how
There's
you,
arranging
just so you know, that you still have to come back for.
yeah, oh no, we don't, we actually have a pending application for,
Which what I'm trying to say is, you might not.
for that phase. We have a pending application for that phase right now. And, Dan, what phase are you doing right now?
Pods 1 and 20.
So that's 1 and 20 here.
Could I ask a quick question? So is it a concern of the product type that would go on the skinnier lots? For example, if the same product type was gonna go on a 60-foot wide lot as well as a 45-foot wide lot, yet the reason for this is to accommodate different product type on the larger lots. So what, just for my edification, is the concern the thinking that a smaller product would go on the skinnier
No,
lots?
I think a lot of what we found, especially as we saw the referendum come through and the Danzy and the other properties that were involved in this process, is they wanted different size of lots.
The
with
community.
Allowing the community with a minimum of 6,000, so that scale of 6 to 10,000 would allow you to diversify the product. Because if you had 5 that were 10,000 and then 5 that were 8 and then 5 that were 6, you would have 3 different products on it. Now what we're seeing is you're wanting more of an average of 6,500 and maybe a little smaller so you could get a different product on it instead of a different size lots with products. You want the smaller lot sizes with different products. And that's what it feels like.
We were hoping to see.
I don't think it's, until you know really honestly who the builder is, you're always concerned about product type. Right. I mean, that's it.
So
And it doesn't matter what size the lot is, you're concerned about the product type no matter what size the lot is. Again, I think a very public discussion around this one and really coming to the final development agreement we did there focused a lot on lot size.
Right. That's why.
Very heavily on lot size, and again, and wanted that variation ability in there of product type based on 6,000 as the minimum, but you can go bigger if you want a different product type on there. And again, I think all of our intent on doing that range of 6 to 10,000 was again to give that flexibility. It says if somebody doesn't want the standard, 2-story, 2-car garage, they can get the 3-car garage. It just requires the developer to have a bigger lot size available for them to accommodate that. And again, I'll be honest with you, to the thought of opening up that development agreement again, I don't think my therapist can go there.
We're not here to pick a scab. We're not, that's why that was the conversation with Gordon was like, let's just have this quickly and if there's some understanding of that. But the challenge is that the way that these are lotted, they actually are, this is lotted at the maximum on every pod. And so I have probably some flexibility to pull some lots out of this pod and move them there. But what I'm doing is, instead of these being a little bit larger, the way they are, I'm gonna move some lots from here and make those smaller because I have depth. Because I can go, once I go beyond 100 feet deep, then I can go to 45 feet wide. And so and the 60's a challenge because you just have to look out your window. When you have, everything is 60 feet wide, because of the 100-foot depth, they all look the same. And you don't get that third car garage option unless you lose some lots. And it's economically, it's a challenge because the Dancy's drove a pretty hard bargain. The other thing that I think that I'd like you to consider, or at least just ruminate on it. And if it's a hard no, that's okay too. We're okay. We knew what we bought, and we're big boys. We get it. But that is that the waters was also transferred by unit type. So every time that there's a unit taken out, there's a connection, there's a share there that hasn't been that's been allocated for that the city has that we probably ought to get back if we were to lose some lots. That's just something to maybe think about. I don't know, John, that's a...
Are you aware of that, John? I'm not. Will you look into that? I'd be interested to know how that.
I didn't know we had gotten our water yet.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
But
on that piece.
we would actually probably lose water right share.
Yeah.
Water right.
Yeah, we did that, yeah. But we'll try to be a little more creative. We thought this was a quick way to maybe solve some problems, and we're happy to be here. We've actually, so Ivory, as you know, we've been doing the Juniper project, which is the Hamilton property. Very happy, appreciative of being a partner with you there. We just closed on lots up at the Cove at Herriman Springs. They had 19 finished lots, and we purchased those. So we do have product differentiation among other projects, which is why I'm trying to keep product differentiation within this area too. So just so you understand, I have 3rd-acre lots across the highway, right? So it's hard for me to lose lots here when I can just move somebody to another community. So it makes it a bit of a challenge. But
Chris, how small do those lots get? So you go 45, so they become 4,500 square feet? Or
they might,
55,
yeah.
55?
Yeah, they might be, yeah. But the average stays the same within the park. But anyway, I just have to say that it's this is a hard thing to do, is to follow John Brems after that training. So I'm just glad I'm not. My last name isn't Ship because now he has to follow me. So anyway, I think we've got the answer.
I do very much appreciate the fact that you want to bring diversity in your developments, because I think that was something that we've all, hopefully you can see that that's what we tried to build in, that flexibility in there, and I appreciate the fact that you're trying to find a way to do that, because I think that's important for any neighborhood.
If you look at the architectural guidelines that are in the development agreement, they literally lifted them off of our website. Yeah. Like 2/3 of the homes that are in the development agreement, they just downloaded off of our website. So we're glad that they selected us, and we're pleased to be in the city and to do this project. But we think you'll like it. We're just hoping that we could get a little bit more product diversity. And maybe after the first phase, we come back and say, is this the outcome you were hoping for? If it's not, maybe we could have another conversation.
And I think this is teaching me in the future for this size development, we may want to see an example of some layouts before so that you don't get stuck with just the bare minimum per lot, because when we were told the numbers, nobody went to the design phase, right? And so we assumed that they averaged the difference between 10,000 and 6,000 was going for an 8,000 square foot lot was the average.
Yeah. Believe me.
And that is my new.
They went to the design.
I'll be honest,
6,000.
So
Well,
that'll be a new requirement.
The other challenge there is as soon as somebody brings in a conceptual plan, now this is what everyone thinks they're getting, and so we try to steer away from those as well.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get you to Adam's point, I think, in our head. Okay, start at the average of 8,000, and then you have flexibility on both.
And when you're dealing with a Perry Homes or an Ivory Homes, we are the end user. And so when we're doing a development agreement, we can have those conversations earlier. They're at a bit of a disadvantage, and you're at a bit of a disadvantage. But candidly, what ends up happening is what you think is the ceiling is really, what you think is the floor is really the ceiling.
Correct.
Yeah. I guess another thing too, you have to understand is part of our responsibility also is infrastructure for our residents. And every one of those residents have to drive all the way through our city. So the more you put out there, the more impact it has on all of
6,400?
On I-34,
Yeah.
131st on Main Street.
Or
There's some issues on that, and so to keep saying, let's, you know, this isn't right.
Well, again, we're not asking to increase
I
density at all.
understand, but our hope was that we would have even less homes because there would be some variety and we would push up to 10,000 on a few of these and so it's
And
just discouraging.
that is gonna happen. I mean, just honestly, there will be that case.
Because of how you have to lay them out.
Well, just because, you know, some of them are, you know, have more depth in some locations. We're pinched here because of the FEMA floodplain. That's why there's no lots along here. So the FEMA floodplain comes in here. But where we have the ability, you know, when we have some depth, you are going to see those lot sizes. The challenge is they're gonna be narrower. And so you think that's why this kind of flexibility is helpful in creating a different streetscape. But you know, we've got some deeper lots over there, so it's less of a challenge. But it's hard to move these lots when these are gonna be really nice lots along this open space. You know, I wanna have some nicer, bigger lots.
Is
along there.
it the width of the lot that is the
Yeah.
issue?
Mhm.
So if you kept to the 6,500, you still could achieve it with that, or
Yeah,
not?
the example I showed you stays at 6,500 average.
That's the average.
No, but I'm not saying
That's
average, I'm saying minimum.
So
No,
what's
that's
kind of
not a
a
minimum,
minimum
that's
width
average.
for special garage?
72.
So in the future, 72, 75 would probably
Write
be,
that
a-
into the DA.
would be a better plan in the
Minimum
future to
width
catch
is
Well,
72.
right?
What the reason that they're not all that is because we're also talking about some housing variety too.
Yeah.
And I can take you to some places that all have third-car garages and you're like, I mean, all right. So, not my neighborhoods, but others. Anyway, thanks for,
Well, we appreciate,
yeah, we appreciate your time.
Perry, Ivory Homes, Chris, I mean, we appreciate you guys coming out and, I mean, we'll see more of you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I do have a great staff, by the way. No, so first off, Bryn is the best. Michael has been harassing me 3 different cities. Gordon in 2, John in like 5. But these are great, they're great people and I love working with your staff. They're really good. You've really got great staff.
thank you. Michael, did you have something?
Yes, I do. This conversation has actually been very educational for me. Because we all seem to agree that we want the variety. And we even thought we were structuring a development agreement that would encourage that or facilitate it. But the reality is we had a variety of a minimum and a maximum. And of course, as the master developer sells the development rights to another party, it's sold at the maximum. So given our propensity for doing development agreements, I'm assuming we're gonna do another with someone else down the road. We need to build mechanisms in the agreement so that you will actually incentivize the variety, but we're not having this range because they're always gonna go to the maximum.
It's almost like you're gonna have to have percentages, you're gonna have to have percentages
You're almost
of that
gonna have to
size.
define that, it's 6,000 to
Yeah.
10,000, but you have to average 8.
I had the same response.
Or to say
that
6,000,
this-
we got 25%.
Yeah.
But once I recognized that they purchased at the maximum, the only way we could reasonably expect them to introduce variety is to have to do something like this. But I'm not trying to convince this commission council to change your mind. I think your response is very understandable. I think in the future, we need to be more careful of how we structure that. Because they're always gonna explode.
Which is why I hate
So,
the
and that's
agreements.
understandable.
How many times
The,
have we
the
said
best, the best development agreements have the most flexibility. The best outcomes are the ones that give the most flexibility. And that is counterintuitive to an elected official who says, no, I want to know how it's going to be, and I need to picture it in my mind. And I don't know if I want to give you the flexibility. And the truth is, you don't know what the market's going to be in 10 or 15 years. And so by creating flexibility in it, it allows us to meet the market, but we have a higher threshold to meet those standards. I have 3,500 square foot lots in Park City with incredible architectural requirements on them. So you can get a great outcome, but you have to give flexibility, and I know it's hard. I've been doing this I just had my 25th year with Ivory. So I've done this a lot. And I can tell you the best development agreements, the best outcomes are the ones where you give flexibility, but you create higher standards. And you give a lot of authority to your staff to make sure that stuff happens the way it's supposed to happen. So.
I think that depends on the development work, because I do believe some of them are not very flexible development agreements. That's why you err on the other side and go back and forth, because not all developers will treat you fairly. And I appreciate you guys coming.
The market's very fickle. Remember, just because someone comes in doesn't mean they're gonna be in business the next day.
Yeah.
And so what you're dealing with are property rights, right? Not an individual, but the property right. But,
Thank you, guys.
yeah, thank you.
And did you have something to say?
I think, did you have a question?
I just had a quick question, kind of along the lines of density versus profit, which obviously you need to make stay business. So if we were to allow 2,000 square foot lots somewhere and you put houses onto those 2,000 square foot lots, would you make more money squeezing little teeny houses on little teeny lots? Or where does that maximize?
The answer is it all depends. So, from Perry's perspective, we don't see the profitability in squeezing it down. We'd much rather do medium-sized, larger homes, right? We see more profitability out of that, but a different builder's gonna have a different opinion, so.
So you can see some builders actually will find a way to make money on a little teeny 2,000 square foot lot.
A lot of it has to do with that builder's model too. If they need to turn their money fast, they're gonna do it better with the smaller product. If a builder's objective is to have a higher return per home sale, then the larger lot model works for their model. So I hate to answer, it depends, but it really does, depending on the builder.
At least you didn't say, what do you think? But just, and I think it's interesting because we're having a little bit of different types of units going to the city, but we have right across from the cemetery, 22 homes that just went in, and they're sold out, and they haven't even built one yet. And they're all quarter to third acres. And so, I mean, there's a demand for the middle size because the smaller ones, we have a lot of it in our city.
Well, part of the reason I bring it up is a development right next to me that's these little 6,000 square foot lots with teeny two-car garages, and they have not sold at all. It's taken them 2 years, and they've got maybe, there's a couple 3 cars that are going in now, but it's just not going anywhere. So that's why I was wondering if there's kind of a sweet spot there.
Yeah. We're seeing a lot of people, at least near us in the townhomes and other areas, that are moving out to try to find larger homes, and there's not enough in the city right now.
That was the intent of that
So-
range, to be honest, is to try and get more.
We're trying to get the middle
understanding of
size. So the 0.18 to 0.25, the right after your starter home. And we're missing that in the city right now, it feels like.
And I think that's what we're trying to bring, but we understand the constraints you have with reopening the development agreement.
We like Clinton, we want them to stay safe.
Next thing is we're gonna have a long relationship, so.
Yeah.
we could not be-
They have run in the first phase, you guys will see that in the next couple weeks.
We're excited. We're excited, and we appreciate you guys coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's move on to item 1.4, and welcome Jared. You just got here, we appreciate it. This is the discussion of the proposed Mountain Ridge development located at approximately 138 South Centennial Ridge Boulevard with Edge Homes. Are you heading this up, Gordon, or are you just helping get to where we need to?
I'm starting it. I'm
You're
gonna
the
take the
start?
first 2
Okay.
minutes and then leaving.
All right.
So,
So tell them Dave.
yeah, so we met with the city council, last city council meeting, to talk about Edge is getting ready to purchase some property from SLR, this piece of ground. This is owned by Jordan School District. This is 134 Mountain View Corridor. This is the new high school, elementary. This is Patriot Ridge Boulevard being built. Sentinel Ridge. And so they are getting this, actually they're getting all this property under contract. And so they're getting ready to bring this to the city. They brought a plan, the city council kind of looked at it, gave them a bunch of feedback. They felt they could get it ready tonight, but they don't have it ready. So they're not coming, but we still thought it'd be worthwhile, because when we were explaining this property, what the zone is, the general plan, it was a little confusing. So we're going to give this to the city council and the planning commission, just what is the current disposition of this property. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be getting some plans from the developer to develop this property, but we wanted to give you a baseline of what the general plan says. This particular property is under a development agreement, what it says, the current zone, and then we're going to stop there. But then when you get the plans, you'll have that background as we go forward with this. So Bryn's going to take it from there.
Did you steal the pointer? Did Chris steal the pointer? Oh, there it is. Okay. That's really weird, just down that way. Okay, so again, 134 is at the top of the screen. And if you can't see, the city limit is right there. That's 13800 South. So again, Riverton. This property is entitled in Riverton as part of the Centennial project. And I believe it's 8 units per acre over the whole Centennial project, and that's, you know, already entitled with that density. So we'll be talking about this piece in Herriman, obviously. So this is again zoomed in a little closer, is 138 at the north. This is the current zoning on the property. This piece here that's R215 is part of the Rose Crest PUD. So Rose Crest, you know, all of this area here in East Herriman has an approved PUD with approved density in different pods. So this piece here that's R215 is part of the Rose Crest PUD. And we'll go through that and I'll show you the density that they have there. So this piece is entitled with density. The piece at on the north side is A1. It's about 100 acres and has no entitlements, no approvals on that northern piece. That's the next slide. There you go. So again, let me just show you this. So this is again the whole Rose Crest master plan. So this is the piece we're talking about right up here at the top. So this is where the high school is.
That's the small bottom portion of that. Or is that the entire piece that we're talking about?
This is just the Rose Crest piece.
So will you go back to the last slide and show
Yeah.
which piece that is?
That's just this piece right here.
Piece right here. Okay.
It's not the same shape because the elementary's there, so you know, kind of cut the elementary out. So that's where we are right there. So you can see, and I'll go to the next one so you can see it zoomed in even more, that this is approved on their plan as medium density up to 5 units per acre, which would be typically similar to what's next door already, smaller lot, single family. So again, so this piece, we're not really talking about much because it's entitled with their density, so most of the focus will be on the rest of the property that doesn't have entitlements.
Hey, Brent, really?
Yeah.
Just since the school pieces came out of
Yes.
that density goes away.
Yes, so it's like you guys can read my mind.
Oh.
So this is from, it's like you've seen this before. This is from the development agreement, which basically says if you sell to the school district, you lose the units off that property. So the property, go back here. This property here that they trade with the school district, they lose the density off of that property. So again, that's why we're just talking about the remainder there. And that's again from the development agreement. So this is the current general plan. If you remember a year ago or so, we amended the general plan to add some commercial, 10 different commercial areas. This was one of the commercial areas that we added to the general plan at the time. So again, this piece, not really talking about because this is Rose Crest approved. So on the rest of these maps, you'll see this is at the 5 units per acre because that's what the Rose Crest is already entitled on this piece. So again, the current general plan here shows commercial here. Again, the school district owns about half of it on that side next to Mountain View. And then low density on this side, 2.5 units per acre. This is the current general plan. What the conversation with the developer obviously is potentially changing that. This is about what the unit count would be under the current.
How much does the school own out of that 60 acres?
The school, it's on the next, let me show you here. So the school is there, it's about 25 of it.
Because obviously they can build in whatever zone they want, so that could potentially be half school, half.
Yeah, so the school piece, we're kind of not talking about any either. The school district owns that piece. It's
And they
general
have
plan, it's
intentions of
commercial.
using it and they're wanting to build there, or they're
Right
thinking
now, they're
somewhere
saying
else,
it's a middle school. Whether that happens, we have no
It could
idea.
sell.
They're gonna sell.
It's strong, maybe.
They're likely not to build.
They're likely not gonna put it there. So we will continue to show it as commercial on the general
And
plan.
whoever
We're
they
not-
sell it to is gonna come in and ask for more density too.
But it's zoned commercial right now.
His general plan is commercial.
It is general plan.
No, they want. It's
Zone A1, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's general plan, it's not.
So again, this is, one of the ideas would be obvious, so again, Rose Crest piece is what it is. This piece, not changing the density here. This is the additional piece that the developer would prefer to put residential instead of commercial. So really what we're talking about is potentially changing this piece to some type of density.
But right now it's zoned A1,
It's zoned A1,
but then we have a general
commercial.
plan for commercial.
I'll just be open right now, unless I see some amazing reason to change what our general plan is. I have no desire to change what we have on our general plan. That's just my.
And that's why we're talking about it, so. I know when we did all of that commercial general plan change last year, there was a lot of discussion about this piece and whether it should all be commercial. The property owner wasn't thrilled about the change. So there was a lot of discussion about this piece at the time, so. This kind of proposal here shows this piece changing to low density, same as what's next door. And again, that's kind of the units you're talking about. These are just kind of generic scenarios. This one shows if we changed this piece to single family, which goes up to 4.5 units per acre, again, gets you up to about 400 units. These are just random, kind of if we wanted additional residential in that area. Again, Mountain View corridor, where we have historically talked about more density next to Mountain View, less density as we go west. So is this the right place for more residential?
Same owner on what?
Edge Homes, the same developer, is buying all of this up to 134. So this whole piece and the whole piece in Riverton. So their plan would be to develop the whole thing, you know, they don't want to look at boundary lines, they want it to be one cohesive community. So that's the way they're looking at it, but yeah.
I told them in the council meeting that we have no desire for it to mirror what's on the Riverton side.
Wait, so Riverton would take some of the most prime commercial property and turn it into houses?
I think there is some commercial up at the intersection on 134,
Yeah.
but then I think it's higher density on the rest of 134.
I just look to the future, 134th between Mountain View Freeway and
And
Bangalore
Bangalore?
Freeway is gonna be the busiest road in the state. Why would you put housing on the busiest road in the state?
It is, the plans I've seen show some commercial and some higher density.
Well, yeah, even high
Yeah.
density housing, why would you put that on the busiest road in the state when you could build an office
Yeah.
park or something
Yeah.
that is, yeah, this is
Yeah.
just.
Well, and that's why I don't have any desire to change what we have, is because we put the commercial zoning there, on the general plan, very specifically
Yeah,
to
that's gonna
protect.
be the busiest road in the state,
One
the
of the
busiest
busiest
road in the
roads in the
state,
state.
why would you put housing on it?
Only has such a limited,
Yeah.
So-
Anything talking about that.
any
is
type
fine.
So I'll tell you my only thought, and that if there was any changes that were allowed here, it would be to switch some of the residential that's along 134 on the top, right along the high school boundary. So just 138. So just switch it to where
Put residential down along next to the high
right there,
school.
and then you stretch the commercial along the top of it as well
I agree.
To buffer.
to buffer the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thought I have is a buffer of the school. Instead of having some sort of commercial buffering the school.
And where's
And it's
the
not
plan
bad, but
tracks?
that'd be the only.
Right down Sentinel Ridge.
It's 138
So, you need to explain the swap.
Yeah, 138, Gordon, is there an off ramp on Mountain View right there?
Brent, we need to go to the other component of this.
Well, so,
I don't know that we're gonna,
Oh, I wanted to catch these when they talked about that. So what tonight's for is not to speculate on what they're going to do, but we wanted you to have a clear understanding where life is right now today. What life is that commercial, this density, this development agreement, because it was kind of confusing when I explained it to City Council. I didn't do a very good job. So we wanted the Planning Commission to see this clearly, because an application is going to come in for all this property. Excuse me, not this, but just this. And so what we wanted to do is have you have a really good understanding of where we are today with that. And then when they bring their application, we'll be bringing you whatever information they want to provide. They got good feedback from the City Council a week ago. And so they have.
What was that feedback? Good feedback.
Yeah.
Come back with an actual plan.
Gordon, is there going to be an
Yeah, so there is a writing right out right on 138, isn't it, Gordon?
Yeah, so right here, there'll be a right in, right out, and this would tie in through here, and this would have a bridge over, this is Riverton, Bluffdale here, and this road will
It's
connect.
gonna happen.
That's a light intersection or just?
Right in, right out on
Gordon, I think it's
You'll only
imperative,
be able to get it if you're going north.
it's imperative that they understand the other aspect of this, because without that, this makes
It doesn't
no
make sense.
Everyone around this table is gonna say, no way.
So, yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is, so they're gonna come back with a proposal. So SLR owns this property, they also own about 300 acres over by 118 that they have a development agreement. And what they're looking at is reducing those units, particularly they have 300 units of apartments, to eliminate them. And the intent would be to put some units over in this area. So there's some logic to that in that this is closer to infrastructure, closer to access to the Mountain View corridor, to the Boulevard corridor, not right to the city. So they're coming up with a complete proposal for that element, and that's going to be part of what the City Council sees. What I'd like to do is when this hits the Planning Commission, I'd prefer them to think about this project in terms of what really makes sense here and let the City Council wrestle with, I don't want to say trade, but the elimination of units on the other and what that implies in this area. So from the Planning Commission side, I don't think you should worry about the swap as much. The City Council will do that in open meetings like we just talked about. And they're going to vote before you do on the elimination of units. So you already know what has happened before you've done an approval or recommendation for an approval of zone change and a master plan change. And once the City Council approves it, then it shows up in their lap, and they'll already change the development agreement. So when this comes through, you will know what was lost on the other units and what makes sense here. But at the end of the day, I really want this to be a great development, independent of that trade. The City Council is going to protect the city in terms of no net new units or a reduction of units net in the city. And that's going to be the City Council decision. Yours is to make a good project out of this.
So, and granted, I know we don't want to talk about the swap, but are we in thoughts of potentially expanding the park to 60 acres versus 45 and move units over? Like,
One of the things.
like
that-
have we even
the
thought
images
about
that
the process, or just reducing the density over here and moving it over here so it's just we have a little larger homes?
The pictures that they brought us last week didn't even have all of the open space required for what's already there. And so they have that, I think that's one reason why they weren't proud over here is because they haven't gotten all that together.
So
I'm just wondering what the city's going to gain.
So what the city gets is they're going to, they have the 300 acres, part of it's already been developed, but the remaining portion, in the remaining portion, they're going to eliminate X number of units, which will end up probably translating into other units being bigger.
I don't think the open space changes, I think the rest of it just gets bigger.
That's my anticipation.
So my question is though, are we gonna change the general plan on the other side?
The city council is
Oh, the
going to have to
Creek Ridge
change the development agreement. Creek Ridge is going to have to
Not the
change.
general plan, the development.
So and the development agreement has a cap of numbers. It's going to be reduced. It's going to have certain units that are going to be eliminated out of the agreement.
Basically, all we've told them at this point is we're open to the concept, but they didn't bring us enough information to talk detail.
They wanted to get the
We want to talk
feedback.
about anything, but you gotta bring us something to talk about.
I guess I'm just trying to see where the real benefit to the city is with
So,
what they're
so the
proposing.
benefits from the city would be
Anyway.
this. If the units are coming into the city, the type of units that you would eliminate at Creek Ridge, would be your apartments, and you would pick them up over here,
But it would not be a
and you would not get apartments, but you would have the net zero number of you, and you'd be closer, instead of all these trips,
Or a reduction.
instead of all these trips coming down through the city, all these trips would hit Mountain View and go this way, and they're not impacting the rest of the community as much. So there are benefits, but again, to the planning commission, to the earlier comment I was trying to get to, is I want the planning commission to look at this project and see what makes sense to make that a great project. If you see something that makes it a great project, I want you to recommend it. I want the city council to weigh in on the net loss. That's what their job's gonna do. And if that net loss helps them feel good about approving what you recommend, they'll approve it. But you'll see what they've net lost out, so you will have that in the back of your mind. Was that as clear as mud?
So the other loss, so we get the change in housing types, but then we would lose a commercial base.
Pardon?
But then we
Yeah.
would lose a commercial base.
So let's be extraordinarily clear on that. They would like to see that residential, and that's a decision of the city council. Right now, it's general plan, commercial. And so the planning commission ought to make a recommendation. When we came through the planning commission last time, some of the planning commissioners had felt that maybe that was too much commercial at that location. If you do, you do. If you don't, that's a decision you guys should make. Our recommendation, then the city council.
I was like, doesn't that come to us?
What? Pardon?
I was like, doesn't that eventually come to us?
It's all gonna get to the city council. But I want you to do the vetting, really give a great recommendation to the city council for them to approve.
How much residential does Central Cal have planned?
So Center Cal has a ton of residential. So,
More than they could probably ever do.
yeah, just mountains.
So we can use some more commercial to support.
But the idea is it's next to a major corridor.
Yeah.
And next to tracks.
It makes more
Because
sense.
I think it's 8 units overall, but it's.
His
Yeah.
tracks line is supposed to come down there.
Gotcha.
What's that
Versus
develop?
out on 118th and have to drive all the way through our city. It's much more impact from that density out there.
So I think what they were proposing has some good benefits to the city. I think this is worth us entertaining these ideas and discussing them and then making a decision on them. So that's why I think it's important for you to hear. So tonight, I just want you to understand, this is part of the development agreement, how that works. This does not have a development agreement. This is general plan. They're all zoned the same, they're 1 unit per acre. This is general plan here,
That's all commercial.
and this is all general plan commercial. So we're just giving you some thoughts to think about. You're gonna probably start seeing these in fairly rapid succession. There's a lot of moving parts to make there's reasons for values of the city to get this done. If you look at this greenway here, it's really great, it's a greenway, but it's also the storm drain for all of our projects to go through, and they're willing to donate all that land to us as part of that. We're anxious to get that done, but I don't want to sacrifice speed for a good plan. I'd rather you focus on, so planning commission, don't worry about any of my problems. I want you to think about a good plan and recommend something you can feel good about.
Is there a track stop in this area or just the track?
So the tracks comes through here, so this road through here is 30 feet wider. So they'll be building a trail on 30 feet of extra width, so that this road can eventually be expanded for the tracks line through here. So that's another thing to think about. Tracks will come through here, you got Mountain Corridor, 138th is up here, 134 is
It's
more.
probably not a spot.
That's what I'm wondering.
It's probably Center Cal and then.
Center Cal and then down here.
Down to Southern Community College,
Or
nothing.
RSL.
I don't think we want to stop here.
Yeah,
You could do a nice TOD if you have
that's
to
a,
stop.
yeah, MUTOD. Roll in the commercial.
Here, and I could get from.
You gotta be careful with your.
We don't want to fire anybody today. So,
But you can get some commercial base out of it too.
yeah. No, I think there's room for commercial, there's all these things, so I want you to be.
Gordon, do we have all the information we need for?
Yeah, so more I was trying to give you information and have the planning commission hear this, so when the next time they see this, they've already been introduced to it, and one of the disappointments for me is I wanted them to bring their plan in front of the planning commission, city council together, so that you could give some clear direction to the planning commission. And so I'm debating.
I might suggest that we maybe do this again.
Yeah, the problem is we only schedule these every 3 months, and so we're gonna debate whether we have a joint meeting just so when this plan shows up, this is a big enough deal that we really want the city council, because when you're changing the general plan, we don't want you to do it willy-nilly. We want the city council to tell you this is something we think is probably okay to entertain. Not to do, but entertain, move forward through a process. So we'll probably do a joint meeting.
Well, thank you, Gordon. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item 1.5, which is a discussion of a proposed amendment to the general plan to rezone for property located at 5101 West, 118 South, DAI.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen, the council has seen this a couple times. So this is sideways and upside down. This is 118th and Mountain View and Copper Creek subdivision here. So do we know where we are?
Which was north?
North is this way. Left. So they have submitted an application for a rezone and a general plan change on this property. Right now, the general plan shows it as park open space, basically, and it's rezoned to E1, I think.
So currently zoned.
Yeah, currently zoned E1 right now. And they're asking for some changes, so we wanted them again to come show it to the whole group, just to get some feedback. They had a neighborhood meeting last night, but we had quite a few people here. And we're gonna have another one. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have another one. So you guys wanna come up and show them what you're.
I'm the guy with the last name of Ship,
Yeah.
Mr. Gavrulis referred to. And I'm glad my last name is Ship, not Gavrulis. You can tell him that. This is not a new acquisition for us. We've been in front of you once with an application, which we then decided not to move forward with. After that application closed, we've had some conversation with some of you about some ideas we've had, and since then we've gone ahead and actually submitted an application for the rezone that Bryn mentioned, and we did have some great conversation with several of the neighbors that live here, and we got some great feedback on what I hope will help us add some specificity going forward to our site planning and where we're headed, assuming that you all get comfortable with our requested zone change first. That to us is the first step in a several-step process of going through adding the specificity behind where we're going to end up with the project. This is kind of the beginning stages of that. So right off of 118th, we're proposing a C2 zone with an office park in mind. We have talked about the access to that will mainly come and align with the intersection that's already there.
We help you understand about how many acres that is.
10.5. Just the office piece.
Just the office piece, yes. Sorry, I think the total piece is 27 acres. And so this piece here is 10 acres. Now there's, if y'all remember, we acquired this through a trade with UDOT, and UDOT was giving us some of the, we own a much larger piece in Saratoga Springs where the Mountain View corridor is going, and they took 117 acres of that property and said, hey, we need this for the future corridor going south, but we don't have any money to buy your ground, so we want to give you some trade property, and this is one of the pieces that offset that. And so we got 10 acres here. They kept ownership of their pond here, so we don't own this piece. Rocky Mountain Power
actually has title to this property that's hatched here. We don't own that ground, it's Rocky Mountain Power
So
property.
it's not an entitlement that is actually owned by Rocky Mountain Power?
Yes. This property we own, so everything in, so this is the 27 acres. And so we thought, as we've talked, that the office zoning here makes sense on the 10 acres. We had some conversation. Initially, there's an approved right-in, right-out access off of Mountain View corridor that will come into the ground here. And our initial thought was to connect that right-in, right-out to the road.
Black Powder Drive.
Black Powder Drive. Thank you, Brent. Institutional knowledge once again. Black Powder Drive. In our initial application, we heard significant public opposition to that idea. And upon further study with the traffic analysis, realized that with the congestion that's happening here, this connection really would become a thoroughfare, an access point for a lot more neighbors than shown here. And these roads really just can't accommodate that. They're not sized for that. It would be impact. So as we looked at, okay, if we're not going to connect this through, what do we do with this piece? It's a mid-block property. It has access off the Mountain View corridor. What uses make sense there that aren't high-density residential? And so the outdoor-indoor storage is what we're proposing. The only zone that you have in your city that allows for that, as we've worked with your staff, is the M1 zone. But we're bringing that forward with the anticipation that it will be restricted to just the indoor-outdoor storage. We're not looking to do industrial development there, for instance. That's not our intent.
And the outdoor storage would just be RV storage?
RV storage, yeah, kind of over here. And to be honest, then we thought, well, gosh, since we have this access and it's just that, maybe we should extend that storage to be in here. But we looked at your plans and got some feedback from the community, and we met with your Parks and Trails department, and there's a plan to connect Midas Creek Trail through here, and there's some plans to improve this area with trails. And we thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity for us as a development company to put our better foot forward and not try to just maximize our own profitability here, but bring a proposal to leave a bunch of this as open space improved park. So, do you remember what the acreage is on that?
We're close to 10 minutes.
We have, in good faith, we have already signed easements with the city of Herriman to allow for the specific placement of the trails through our property. We're not trying to hold that hostage, or we see this as a great chance for improved open space here. Now, what we got last night was a really interesting set of feedback. Because as we talked to the neighbors, I heard some about the storage and I heard some about the office park, and I heard a lot about what we should do with this ground. Strong opinions for soccer fields, against soccer fields, for dog parks, against dog parks, for leaving it completely native and not touching it, just leaving it like it is. And I'm sure glad I'm not on the city council. Because our intent here is to give you a gift, and we would love some direction as we go forward with this as to figuring out what that gift ends up ultimately looking like. Maybe that's a bad idea for us to put that on you all, but maybe some feedback tonight would be helpful so we can solidify our plans here in going forward. It really doesn't apply to the zoning that we're requesting, but in the future we're going to bring some site plans and some other things to you, and we'll want to figure that out with you. I will tell you that the feedback we've gotten from your Parks and Trails department is that there's not a plan in place now for this to be a city park. There's city trails, but when we first said, well, why don't we donate this to the city and have you all just improve it and maintain it? The feedback we got was, we've kind of got some other parks planned and whatnot. So we took that, and we've actually been, in way of full disclosure, I also wear another hat. I'm on the Utah Youth Soccer Association board. That's the public-private partnership with the state of Utah that kind of oversees all of the different soccer organizations. And we've been talking with them about potentially putting some UYSA soccer fields here that would be owned by UYSA, would be improved by them, maintained by them, organized by them. Be open to the different soccer organizations in your city. You would get the benefit of having those fields available for your Herriman city soccer organizations without having to incur the cost of building them and maintaining them. So that's an idea that's out there.
Where do they park?
Yeah, I was gonna say about parking.
Great question.
Yeah.
So that was the big concern by these neighbors especially is that, hey, if everybody comes and starts parking in our neighborhoods, we got a problem. And so we've shown that we need to figure out that.
What is that little jog right there? Do you own that?
No, this is our property line here. And what we are proposing is that we improved the current road that comes back. It's a utility access really for what it is in all intents and purposes at this point. The city has, we would improve that for access to the office park and back in here. And I've requested Rocky Mountain Power to allow us to include their property. I don't have permission from them yet, but I have asked to have them allow us to include their ground along with the ground we do own. And so our thought is whether it's here or we move the fields and we do it over here, or we do, one of the suggestions from the neighborhood was bring the access around and put the parking more linear this way so that you bring the people away from the soccer, away from the homes. We'll have to figure that out. And there needs to be adequate parking, or I don't believe that we should entertain the option of soccer.
What's the space between the C2 and improved open space?
This here?
What was that again?
So this is, sorry, yeah, I may have forgotten to cover that. This is retained by UDOT, and it's their pond for the stormwater that runs off into the mountain.
Where does Kern River run?
Kern River runs, it actually runs right here up against the corridor that Mountain View.
We talked to them about development and things like that?
Yes. And I've also talked with UDOT about relocating this pond potentially, and they've expressed a willingness to work with us on that. So if it makes more sense, one of the things we talked about last night was trying to find maybe a bigger parking area here that we move some of the office park in here, parking as well.
Dual use.
And we kind of have a dual use parking.
Yeah.
Soccer.
All of that is kind of on the table. We've got to get through the zone request first so we know we've got a basis to start the conversation from. And then we got to put our thinking caps on and figure it out from there.
May I just clarify, the acreage of the soccer is just under 6 acres.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Any thoughts? Should we continue to pursue the soccer fields as an option, contingent upon figuring out the parking solution? Does that,
Well, I know that neighborhood right behind it has one park back in it, and it's slammed with lacrosse and soccer and everything all day long. So another one adjacent to that property would be a good idea, to those homes. So I agree. Now, whether that's exactly the use for, whether it's soccer or different space, but I know right now those lacrosse balls go everywhere.
So I think a little history and context might be good for new members of the council as well as the planning commission. This property is currently zoned, I know the answer to these questions. Open space. It's currently, the entire thing is zoned open space.
I don't believe that's true. I believe it's zoned A1.
It's general plan.
General plan is open space. Zone A1, right? So when first time this came through and they were asking for condos and more high-density housing, etc., the neighbors all became educated and know that it's in the general plan as open space, right? So the question is, why would a previous council, it wasn't any of us that were here, why would a previous council put it all as open space?
No, it
yes, guys on the property, but they knew what they were getting. They knew what it was zoned, they knew what the general plan was, they knew what the opposition was, et cetera.
How long has it been general planned?
Pardon?
How long, when did we set that on general plan?
Probably in the 2014 general plan.
And when was this property swap?
When did you swap it? It's been a couple of years, maybe a year? Seems like we've been talking about it for a long time, but I don't remember which product, yeah.
So this, we saw this, what, maybe a year ago? This idea, and I think at the time, the majority of the council said, no, we still aren't interested. I was just, and I can't remember if anybody else agreed or not, I said, my comments at the time were, look, this is better than what we've seen before. And if it's, I mean, I don't think anybody wants to live next to a storage place, but as far as the layout goes, as long as the only access was right in, right out off of Mountain View, there's no neighborhood access, then maybe you have a chance. Office, we would like for several reasons, and on that corner, actually, it's a more logical place. Coming back to your, these are just my comments, but coming back to your question on the open space. Coming with the legacy field project, et cetera, and you're involved with that, just screams conflict of interest. So the next question is, normally with a project like this, like impact fees for the open space. Mentioning USA stuff, if they're gonna pay for it and approve it, or what happens to the impact fees, or are they asking for those to be waived?
So we only collect part impact fee for residential, so the storage or we would not pay you that. From this project, from others we could.
So that's, I mean, those are just kind of a couple of basic things, and as far as I remember at that point, and that was at least 6-8 months ago, that conversation we had at a work meeting, kind of left it at that, and the majority of the council said, we're not interested at the time. So now we're coming back, and again, this is better than what I've seen. I'm anxious to hear what other people have to say, and especially have a community meeting where all the people I know can be there for all the reasons that couldn't be there. Yes, sir.
Sure. I'd like to comment. Is it okay here?
Oh, go ahead, Brett. Sorry, I was zoned out looking at this.
I as well, I like this kind of mirror, I've seen it for 20 years for the Fish property, the Copper Creek came in way before we actually incorporated. We've always talked about doing open space to do the park there. It's very complicated to do as a park. UDOT paid a lot of money for that property. Back in the day, it was way above market. And so they felt like they had to get some value back out, and that's why they looked for a land swap, and we did material, which was like they wholesale meeting. But when you're meeting staff, the big decision makers, your director, UDOT, and our council. So as we move forward, I'm very passionate about open space city. We know something about it. I was at the meeting last night, heard the comments, and some people want just natural grasses. We would call them Herriman weeds. I thought that was odd. But that does comment. They don't like change. But it's a fire hazard to us most of the time out there. It does not maintain very well now. They can actually maintain it more down. What Nate doesn't know, under the Rocky Mountain Power property, Herriman City has an agreement with them, which we signed, I swear when it was present, so within 2 years. I don't remember. It was before we Conley, Bentley, who used to be part of the power, that property under agreement with Herriman City, that we get to maintain and we get to help that kind of design, and we actually talked about landscaping and helping at the park and trail system. They're very open-minded, and by the way, that's, and we have this usually the state, usually the offices pay it back to usually the office. So we got a win out of that, so if this moves forward with the council planning commission, wins is for shoe boxing.
Great.
And I feel like we do have such a shortness of programmable space. I don't care who owns it, we take just on it's there for our youth. But I heard about the comments about going in the subdivisions and how we got to stop people what they run our fence or something, they can't access that park off that road or something. So if you do it privately, just say so.
Yeah, maybe I'll clarify.
Just want to bring those-
We're not opposed necessarily opposed to just giving this ground to the city. We were more trying to be responsive to the conversation that we'd had about if this, you know, what does that mean? Does the city want to take over this property and have to pay to improve it and then pay to maintain it? And so, you know, we've been exploring other alternatives of how can we keep it as open space in a way that doesn't burden the city.
I think that's a good point to make, because that's another thing, that if you look at our budget, that's just about right to be approved. A huge portion of our budget goes just to maintain our parks. 30, whereas, Alan's not here, 30-something, like in the 30 percentile, 30-something percent goes just to maintain our parks. And so if we can have an amenity in our city that somebody else is gonna say, hey, let us mow it, let us pay for the water, let us do those kind of things, and we can provide some soccer fields, that's much more appealing to me than just to say, turn it over to the city, because it's great to turn it over to the city, but there's a huge cost that's associated with that too.
So that's really why we brought in why I mentioned the USA deal. It's not, I'm not trying to benefit, I don't get anything out of that. We pass it through to them, it's, you know, we pass it through to you all. I'm just trying to figure out other alternatives that can be out there.
So most of you know my affinity for that sport. I'll be devil's advocate. So in relation to this neighborhood, as mentioned, the issues that are there with the other part, the traffic, the parking, etc. So while I agree with Sherry completely as far as the maintenance issue, but when you put amenity like this adjacent to the neighborhood, it has a huge impact on that neighborhood. And then to be told that they can't play on it, it'll essentially be private space.
Yeah.
Right, so those other fields that run that way, even when we take our teams to play there, we're told we cannot set foot on that field before a certain time, because that's all we've rented, they're not open to.
So we're open to, Jared, we're way open to figuring out a different way to accomplish what we're all after. I mean, I think, I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I'm trying to figure out a way that we get you all improved fields one way or another that don't burden your maintenance.
So I have a couple thoughts with this. Obviously, I don't think this is a good A1 zone, so I'm in agreement that this makes a lot more sense than that. And I'm not a big fan of a bunch of open space right off of Mountain View. And so I do like the C2 office park. The storm drain, to me, makes a lot more sense moving it up where the storage is, if it's possible to do that. But obviously, I understand you guys want the M1 for indoor-outdoor storage. I don't necessarily think that's a great option based off of what the communities thought this was going to be. I almost look at it as extending the office park to that entire space, sharing parking, moving the park up to where it covers more ground, and then potentially removing that. I don't know if that's a great.
I don't know hydrology works that way.
So,
I mean,
and I'm not sure the layout or anything like that without looking at.
Pretty close.
So
I think when they said
that might be
work
true.
with us on reshaping this a little bit, I mean, we were talking about minor modifications.
Sure. But I'm just looking at from the perspective of the open space and the office park makes sense to me. Even the office park, if we're up where the M1 is, would make sense to me. But I don't necessarily believe the indoor-outdoor storage right there is necessarily the best option for what we have here. But that's just my opinion.
So one of the reasons I liked it there was because we had, there's been a lot of density moved in our city. And that means less and less places for people to store things. We have very, very few places that we have storage. And so to me, it's like, where are we gonna put storage units? Because when you approve density like we have, there has to be storage units somewhere.
Yeah, we have one right down the hill for RV.
Right, but if you compare it to the number of units we have very, very limited storage units.
And we just approved one up by Porter, Rockwell as well, so we have another one there that we approved. I'm just, to me, that doesn't, it's not the best use based off of general plan of where it was and what the citizens expect to what it's becoming. The office space, I think, makes great sense right off of Mountain View, and I also think it's not gonna be something that really affects the city negatively.
So just, does anybody have issue with the office park where it is? No, we're all fairly in agreement with that? Okay, so, we're good with that.
There was actually very few neighbors who had comments about the storage units. We said there'll be a wall, there'll be landscaping, there was more comments about the park almost than anything else.
For me, I think the plan, I don't see an issue. I think the city deserves, because it's, like Jared said, since the city residents probably expect it to be all open space, one of the variants is that the developer could enhance the park, their costs to offset why we're getting rid of all of that open space. That is the case, and I think that is better than for the community, and therefore it could benefit to the scenario. That's where I think. If the city has to go in and pay for it, I don't think there's benefit at all. It should just stay all open spaces. So that's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, if we actually approve this, actually, let's continue to.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm saying, is I think that's what the developer should propose as a betterment, which is why we're supporting the C2, that the indoor outdoor storage. I actually think it makes sense there as well, as long as it is only right in, right out only.
I have 2 phone calls today, by the way, by your residents, that were asking where there's, they can store RVs.
Yeah.
Because our promotional officer, people that have their own property, that actually advertise on KSL. So we're moving them off, we're saying, don't turn from RV, I want close to my home. They're, the one there, he is full. That's the only thing I have around me. And I know that's not to be sympathetic to them, but this doesn't like they do well, but I get Chris's, it's hard for the office park, it's right in, right out, off of Mountain View. I think it works. That will be a very low, empty building for a long time. That's just difficult. The storage, big RV pulling off there, running around, actually it's a very safe turn for them to do that.
I think storage with a couple ZCs to ensure it looks like high quality, I don't see an issue at all.
And remember, I said, well, it was townhomes right there, and pretty high density, was the first proposal. And we had a lot of pushback by the residents, they didn't like that, so I appreciate, I like to see this, they're thinking, they're trying something.
The feedback I've gotten so far is just that if it's properly enclosed, if there's not that direct impact, it's just that the only access is up now.
And reality storage units bring great property taxes, low call line.
Yeah.
And these guys have been very open to a ZC and talk about, you know, obviously limiting the use, limit the height. If they're fine talking about climate controlled, whatever kind of storage units, you know, so they're.
One of the things I'd like to see in all honesty, since that will be on Mountain View corridor, is whatever office park that go, or whatever storage goes there, I'd like to see it closely match the office park above, so that it might possibly be mistaken as part of the office park. I think that would be, for me, as part of that, you know, I know that a lot of these companies have their own designs and want, you know, are known for looking a certain way as a certain company, but, you know, if we could have something that looked very similar and could be mistaken as an office park, I think that would go also a long way to help the residents not even notice it, let alone be upset by it.
John, did you have some remarks, John?
Go ahead.
I think John had some remarks.
Would you be open to a public easement for use of that improved open space if you develop it?
Potentially, depends on where it ends up. I mean, if a group like UISA buys it, I have to work within the investment that entity, whichever entity that might be, you know, would require. I did bring up with them when I mentioned that this might be a possibility that it probably would come with maybe some specific hours that would be open to the public, so maybe it's a limited time so they don't monopolize, you know, all the time, all the year. I don't know, but we'd be open to something. My objective really is to figure out how to get park space for these people within the limitation of doing that without burdening the city without any cost. So, I don't know.
So would you improve the park and give it to the city?
That's an economic issue that I don't think we're going to I'm not looking to buy the land, I'm just looking for them to make the investment to make the improvement to the ground. I'm not.
To me, that's what I was.
Jerry, did you have some
And the
comments?
zoning change?
As far as the office park, the other thing that we discussed, I can't even remember how long ago it was now, we said, kind of gave the stipulations, was the concern of, well, generally with something like this, what happens is the quick, easy money comes first, right? Storage units get built, and then the office park never happens, and then somebody else wants to come in and rezone it for another storage, et cetera. So what part of our conversation at that time was, well, we wanted to put in an agreement that office park has to be started or partially completed before the storage units, et cetera.
And I think we're fine to continue those conversations along those lines. The question, is that started or finished? That's a big deal to us. Like, office space just leases up different than storage. And storage, you'll typically go in and you'll put the foundations in for all of it, and then you just slowly kind of do a chunks at a time as you build up, as opposed to, how much of the office part you have to lease up versus starting, and how much do you end up having to do spec before. I'm not a big spec office guy. I'd rather get my leases in place and then build, but conceptually, within the spirit of that, Councilmember, I think would be fine with that.
I think that's just what we're looking for, just that you're open to some type of stipulation there, because that's, to Jared's point, that's one of the things that happens is someone comes in with an overall big project, and they, and you get the one easy piece of it, and then they walk before the hard piece, which would have been the most beneficial to the city ever happened, because we're just trying to avoid.
The way I put it is, we never get the good stuff.
Well, and so I would expect you to hold my feet to the fire in this, that would require me to, within the spirit of that, perform.
Thank you.
I think generally speaking, I'm supportive of what we see out there. I think there's still some challenges and some discussions, obviously, we have to work through. I think that the office park, I think the location of it makes sense. I think the access there is key to making that successful. To Jared's point, I would like to see, again, something tied in there of what triggers that to have to take place. In terms of the storage, let's face it, just look at it, this is all a very challenging piece of property. And we have somebody who's willing to work with the city and willing to come forward with ideas. And again, I think that they've looked at it, this is a right-in, right-out only, there's no other connectivity through those neighborhoods. I'm supportive of it because, again, I think that there's a clear need in our community for more of this, to Sherry's point. And I would just be interested in, obviously, some of those ZCs on there, height restrictions, those types of things, again, to keep that impact as minimal as possible to those that are immediately around it, who were anticipating just open space staying there forever. Again, we understand things change and we don't have a lot of control over that. Our job is to make the best out of what we can do with it at that point. And I think we have a developer who's here asking for that input of how do we make that better. And I think that there are ways to do that through some of the design guidelines and height restrictions and those things to make that still a benefit to you as the developer. There's clearly a need here. I think, again, there has to be more discussions on. I think we all agree that the open space would be very welcomed in this area. I think the challenge is now how do we come up with actually getting and maintaining for it? Because I know we have a long list of other projects in the city already that we're struggling to come up with money to get to. But I think that this would be a clear enhancement benefit to that area there who has some limitations on their open space in that area. I just think we have to be able to have those conversations and try and be very creative on how we make that the most beneficial to the city without becoming burdensome to the city.
Thank you, Clint. And Bryn, we have, this is obviously the concept plan. So we have another community meeting.
They're gonna have another community meeting in a couple weeks, and then they'll be coming to you, planning commissioner, for a public hearing.
And the public hearing based off of the rezone. So we'll have.
Rezone and a general plan.
Yeah, so we'll have plenty of opportunities for the public to be able to be present,
Yep.
get more feedback, and to get into it. And so this is just one of the first steps with the concept plan. So, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Chris?
Yes,
One
sir.
last thing too, is it sounds like some of these issues can be handled with development agreements, so we'll probably work with the developer, be bringing some of the development agreement participation materials and stuff to the city council, and then probably back to you to see, because that's the process, so that will probably be coming through at the same time.
Okay.
Is that gonna go through, we talked offline, help me know the process of
Yeah.
when that happens, but.
Yeah, we just want to talk about it.
The
because
developer agreement only goes to the council.
The details need to be in there, because Jared was saying the timing of when you do one project versus
Yes.
another, all those kinds of things. I want to have those spelled out as you're going through the process. They're going to look at the design, what you're going to do. The city council's going to look at some of the maintenance, the cost issues, the timing, and I want that.
Are you thinking to introduce that process now as part of the rezone application process?
That's-
Yeah,
that's part of the rezone
and development.
Yep.
So we'll
Should
do
be
a
part of the
rezone and
comprehensive.
development agreement together.
I think you want to do.
And you're not gonna give us zoning without knowing that you're getting that.
The zoning will happen, the development agreement all at the same time.
Perfect.
So I'd like to just have those going concurrently. If we do them all separately, man, it's gonna be a long process. So I'd like rather do them concurrent.
That'd be great.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your
So
time.
Yeah, thank you.
You're up.
We'll move on to item 1.6, which is discussion of the Parks Master Plan. Wendy?
So, some of you know, that we were working on updating our Parks Master Plan, which was originally adopted in 2015. Our growth has spurred the need to update the plan. All of you should have received an email a few minutes ago with a link to a Dropbox file that has the draft available. We're asking you to look at it. It's very comprehensive. And provide any feedback, comments, or suggestions. I do have hard copies for those of you that prefer a hard copy over an electronic copy. So if you want those, that's fine. A couple things that I want to point out. It's interesting that this is following up the discussion about this open space right here, is that we are severely lacking in our parks. Not so much our native open space, but our parks are really low. The plan right now is showing us at 3.6 acres per thousand. The 2015 plan, the goal was 10 acres per thousand. So we do have a lot of opportunities happening right now that are going to allow us to catch up. But I think one of the things that I would encourage you all to keep in mind, not that I'd encourage you to keep this in mind, is what types of projects you want to do and you want to see and what makes the most sense for the community. So we have a lot of projects going on right now. You all are aware we've got 12 actual park and trail projects that are going on right now, either in the planning stage or the construction phase. So we will catch up a little bit, but we are far behind. So please review this and let me know if any comments and suggestions. Yes, sir.
Question.
Yes.
That comparison, 3.6 to 10, is that shortfall, is that because we don't have the property, or we have the property for that, we just
Little
haven't
both.
been able to develop?
Little of both. So you're aware of the 43 acres that's out west. That would not be included. That would that's one of the opportunities that would increase our acres per thousand. Still be short a little
So
bit.
I guess that fits in my question, because we actually, that's been given to us, right? We actually own that property. We just need to do that, we're supposed to do right when we get to that section, so I guess that's the question with it, because when we look through these developments, the questions that residents have is, look, we've been told by council and staff, et cetera, that we gave this density in exchange for open space. Where's the open space? So is it that we haven't gotten it? And where I'm going with this is Doug Young, Herriman High School, that counted as open space, so we didn't get actual park space. Are we short actual space because of, previous agreements like that? Or do we actually have that space lined up, and we just need a plan to fund the improvement?
I think it's both. And I can't answer the Herriman High School, I can't answer all that. I wasn't here that time. I think we're getting better at it. A lot of times we get the leftover pieces that make it really challenging. The piece that we were talking about earlier is very challenging because there's my street that runs right through the middle of it. So when we look at it as a park staff, it would be great for a dog park. That'd be great. Soccer fields with parking and restrooms and all that. And if it was privately done, great. I just think that you could put that money into different areas.
them right off in this view with it going.
And I've been on the committee a little bit, and I remember, and maybe you can remember the numbers, I won't, but realistically, getting to 10 acres per thousand is not something we think that can easily occur right now. And so, without drastic changes.
Yes.
And so that was a lot of our discussion as we were in there is, so what is our goal now? And what are we gonna be able to accomplish? And what does that mean? And it was a little disheartening that we are getting open space that's not usable, programmable open space. And we're getting what the developers are supposed to give us. And it's just not usable.
We're consistently getting detention.
Yep.
And that's great, because we can do a little bit with it, but we can't do a lot with it. So
Not
it
much we
becomes-
can do because a lot of it's governed by these existing agreements that,
Right.
Correct.
again, prior bodies
We
allow.
changed the ordinance, but that's not, it doesn't work that way anymore, but they're all.
But they're grandfathered.
Yes.
So what are some of your ideas to improve like master developments or getting better pieces? I don't know what your thoughts are.
So I think that the ordinance change was one thing that you all put in, right? And we were constantly working with engineering. I think our relationship with engineering, we've had much more hands-on approach to when these come in.
Mhm.
Before, probably 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I never even saw plans.
Sure.
And so now that I'm starting to be part of that process. We have a fantastic landscape architect who's on board and is really an advocate for quality parcels. And I think she's working really well at engineering. She's amazing building. So it's been a great addition.
So Wendy, have you looked in the trail master plan? So a lot of this on the higher density stuff, they actually have parks and amenities inside their communities. Is the master plan taking any of that into account?
Since they're private.
Since they're I mean, I get that they're private for that area, but that would be sufficient to include them for that area, that maybe 3.6 might be an okay number for the other parts of the city, maybe, and that change, maybe it's not 3.6, maybe it's more like 5. Are you including any of that?
We've had some of that discussion and we do need some of that feedback from you all. It's not public space.
Correct.
So while it's private, do you want to count that in your number, and does that show a true picture, a true representation of what the residents of Herriman are able to access?
And one thing that I noticed as well is, and I don't think we were counting that number with the ones that you showed recently, but those parks or pocket parks that there really isn't any programmable space for anything except for we go take our kids, we play at the park and go home. There's not anything else there. And so some of that, and that's with master development agreements, that's with the city council and the planning commission, making sure we're on top of it, is having these developments that are side by side, putting the open space maybe in corners where 4 of these developments become a larger open space that becomes programmable. And that's some of the hiccups of what I saw as I've learned more about what her department's working on is yeah, we got open space. It's not very usable.
So I personally think we should identify all open space, even private open space, so that we're aware of it. I don't know if that drives the decision, but I think it helps see if we're heading towards the Herriman community of we have an open space feel. That may not mean that everybody gets to use that open space, but I still think it's important to have that information.
And I would just hesitate on that in disagreements.
Okay.
Because anything that is public access, sure, absolutely, even if it's not ours, but if it's not public access, if it truly is private owned, I don't think we can, I couldn't in good conscience put that into our plans or even part of our, our representation, because it's not something that residents can go and access. And we might be misrepresenting what they do have access to. We know very well, you put a picture in front of somebody, they think that's what they get. And I would be hesitant that if we put any of that into our plan, they would think that's theirs, that they would get to go access. And then, I know we talked about
But I think without including it, we might be heading towards a number that might not be achievable. is all
I
I'm
think
trying to
showing
say.
the two different numbers, public plus private or public-private, however, is probably something good for us to know because we know there are some services in communities that we're not over, just like
That we don't need to
the
provide.
soccer fields today. If those are privately maintained, we still want to know they're there and it's a service to the community. It's just, we may not want to count it in the numbers or at least
I don't
count
wanna
differently.
I agree, I don't wanna count it in the city's open space. I think the information is good to have because,
That's all.
because Adam's point is that even though it might not be city open space, it is still open, even if it's just to those residents in that area. They still have access to it. So it's meant just as an information piece for us to be able to plan effectively.
We might not need to do as many playgrounds, right? Because we'll use around Real, there's lots of high density with lots of playgrounds going in and swimming pools. That in that area, doesn't make sense to regionalize another park that has playgrounds, but programmable space may be more what makes sense. That's what I'm trying to say is, don't use it for numbers, but use it for awareness
And
so we
planning.
can plan around that. Does that make sense?
I actually think we have to use it for part of the numbers, and we're really talking about two definitions, right? One definition is, take from a planning point of view, we've given these, take an apartment complex or townhomes, we're talking about their HOA park and, right? So, well, part of their donation of open space, they just count that. That goes towards their donation of open space for that criteria. So when the goal of 10 was set before any of us were here, it was including all of those things because they were looking at the gross number, right? Units versus open spaces. And that was open space. And where it might be privately owned by that HOA, it's still open to those people, right? They're still our residents and it's part of the overall plan. And where I think we need a separation of the number is, okay, well, which ones are city ran, city owned, open to everyone? But we still need to have.
We still need to have.
And I think the consultant did ask that as well, do I include that number? But and don't misquote me, but I believe it was unobtainable for us to get to 10.
Yeah.
It was unobtainable.
Well,
We
even in
couldn't do it.
2015, it was, in 2014, it was 5.47 acres per thousand.
Yeah, so we've
We're
dropped
doing
that.
better than, but we've grown so much since then and haven't kept up.
What was that number, 5%?
Pardon? Just in 2014, 5.47.
So the 10 needs to be adjusted, so it's realistic.
And they are doing that. They are trying to give a realistic number because, to be honest, we already have master development agreements set in areas where we don't have parks that are going to be enough to even help in their area. And so yeah, if I remember correctly, it's difficult for us to.
The industry standards are 8 acres per thousand. And some are starting to go away from that and go to how many miles is each home from a park. So some communities are setting a standard that there's a park every 1.25 miles from a home or something like that, so.
See, that's kind of why I've heard those, and I'm worried that if we do that in some of those highly dense areas
Yeah.
that have their own local community parks for their neighborhood, they might not hit the 4-mile radius that we're trying to do, but in reality, there's 4 relatively close parks that they are participating in.
And then for their playground, but to go to programmable space, you gotta drive 5 miles, 10 miles to another city.
That's all.
So for those HOA parks, are you thinking that we just consider them for those residents? How many units are in that HOA?
Correct.
Okay.
So
not
that way we can,
across the street.
so that way we can ensure that everyone's getting a fair amount of parks and access, so that as planning commissioners, we can ensure that as high density stuff comes in, that's a new requirement, which maybe we change ordinances to require more for that, for high density, so that it solves that problem instead of having a city pay more for parks. For parks with playgrounds, we focus on programmables and trails that are bigger community-based, is all I'm trying to say. Not including that, I think we'll start to miss and focus on other things like, holy cow, there's not a lot of
And if
We
you
don't
are
need
going,
to do that.
and if we are going the route of master development agreements, I think that needs to be in those programmable space for these type of things, and needs to work closely with you and your team for that, to understand what is needed in that area.
That's something I was kind of bringing up with our general plan, just our master trail system. Because I mean, you think the master trail system should go to these parks that we have put, you know, where they end, trailheads, things of that nature. And if we haven't planned, then when the developer comes to us, it's like, hey, here's what we want. Instead of, hey, what are all the things that we can do for density to get a park? It's like, no, we have this plan for a park. Make it what it should be around it versus us giving all these points and other things away to get a small park or a pocket park or whatever. Yeah.
And the only other thing that hasn't, and it's relevant to this just because I've just recently learned about it, but so Portland, Oregon has a city ordinance for bicycle paths on roads and everywhere else. It may be something we want to look at, because whenever they do renovations on roads or put in new roads, they always have to make them bicycle safe with paths and everything, and it makes the entire community, and they actually saw a huge increase in that. So it may be something as a city council to look at and consider and think about, so. And it's a lot of work.
So from a process standpoint, the park master plan is an element of the general plan. So the planning commission needs to make a recommendation on it, the city council needs to pass it, make an element. I just didn't want you to see the plan after it's gone through all the committees, everything. Now you get it, and now you have comments, because the intent is to try to get some engagement. So please send a lot of emails.
Perfect.
She hasn't even done it already.
Can we meet as a planning commission, meet about it again?
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Our last item is number 1.7, a review of legislative priority list. Is that you, Bryn? Oh, even with cartoon
It's you.
pictures.
You guys keep giving us lots of great suggestions on changes to make in the ordinance and things to do.
Okay, so.
And it's kind of a question for you of which,
Sure.
what do you want us to do?
So,
Priority.
so I guess planning commission, since this is the first time we've seen this, if you guys would just want to take a look and see, based off what's up there, where our priorities, or where we feel like some of the priorities need to be focused.
And what you would probably tell us, what happens a lot of times is we have things on the list and then the fires happen, right? And that's the ordinance we end up doing. So a lot of times the ordinances that maybe aren't as critical end up getting stalled because vape shops and cannabis come up, and those are ones we have to deal with. So, so it helps us just to know what kind of your priorities are for us to focus on.
I'm guessing that a lot of these proposed have come from members of the planning commission. Can you give us a little context of why these items are under the proposed?
So the planned community zone, PC zone, this is actually one we talked to the council about. This is one that we had talked about. It's kind of a planned community zone that we would use probably in larger properties, potentially Olivia Hills, properties like that. We talked to several other cities who have zones like that, so that's one that we talked to the council about, creating this new zone.
Well, also, and I don't know if this is the same one, but some of the cities, as they've grown fast, they found that they have a commercial zone, but they don't have a commercial recreation zone. So I don't know if that's something that may fall in
So the commercial
this.
recreation zone is one that
Oh,
Chris
the bottom?
brought up, yeah, it's on the bottom.
Yeah, because that way we're able to plan actually having different rec
So
centers.
we're putting a lot of commercial zone, recreational uses in our commercial zone, and we want a specific zone. Auto mall revisions, we all knew we were gonna have to make revisions to the auto mall kind of as we work through different dealerships coming in, so that will likely be ongoing. Sign requirements, is a continuous thing, as we continue to deal with properties next to Mountain View. They continue to want to talk to us about different types of signage. intensive commercial zone, kind of that in between our typical C2 and like an M1 zone maybe. Conditional use for commercial is the one that we found actually, staff found. A lot of you remember we went to the table of uses.
Sounds like your problem to me.
Right? So I should not bring up problems, I should not add to my own problems. This is actually a really interesting one though. We went through the table of uses and we have permitted and conditional uses. There's a spot in the ordinance, in the other part of the ordinance that says anything over an acre is automatically a conditional use. So there's a lot of things that we've classified as permitted uses that will end up being conditional uses because of that. And we don't know that everybody realizes that was our intent to do that. So we'd like to remove that. We're changing it. Parking, we talked a lot about changing parking requirements. Maybe minimizing parking requirements, eliminating parking requirements, and talking more about parking lot standards and design, landscaping.
In commercial zones.
In commercial, yeah. Single-family design standards, again, is one the planning commission has been talking about a lot lately, and maybe looking at
So
that.
one thing I think, and this is one of mine, so you guys understand, is I actually believe that we've made the single-family requirement so steep that it enhances, it's just cheaper to go multifamily. So I personally believe we should focus on multifamily, maybe reduce the, not big things, like maybe minimize the stone a little bit and pull down the minimum square footages a little bit for single family so that it is possible cost-effective solutions and focus more on, and Chris had this idea, like for multifamily, you cannot have any parking that you can see. There's some communities that force you to go underground, which what that does, it causes the cost to go up, which forces it to be.
But it also makes it better.
Single family residential, where we focus to try and make the product look good. Where I think we've priced ourselves out of the market, and now we're getting only high density stuff.
Well, and on the parking,
Put in during the landscape.
Yeah.
and on the parking, I was at, before we moved on to the single family design standards, I was actually going to say parking, I think we need to look at the multi-family aspect of it, and more particular, the higher density stuff, again.
And we have changed that, and the issue again is all the vesting into the old code.
Right.
Because we have increased the multifamily part. But
Right.
yeah, we need
And
to
also,
continue to do that.
I think we need to be proactive in looking at the commercial zones of being proactive in how we apply parking structures in those areas so that we don't just end up with asphalt.
I mean, the planning commission honestly talked about removing parking requirements for commercial.
I don't think we
They
should
know
have
how
it
they
for
can
commercial.
park their product.
We saw that with JCWs, they were willing to buy a lot next to, just to get more parking. They came in last week. And they don't even care about the other commercial there, they just need more parking, so it's their business.
Can keep thriving.
But if you
We
go
need to
down,
go with landscaping and design and really worry about the number of parking stalls.
For commercial.
For
Yeah.
commercial.
For commercial,
but
but I
if
think
you
we
go
should
down
be.
5,600, like for JCWs, and it's a senior living facility, it's just a huge parking lot. I don't think there's grass anywhere. And it's a big structure with all parking. And it's got a horrible feel to it. And that's, I think, what we need to try to figure out how to stop. Because we're gonna have more.
Maybe focus on the number of parking stalls per island instead of worrying about the number of
Yeah,
parking stalls
yeah.
as a whole.
So parking, open space, again, like I just talked about, right, what counts as open space? Is again, a constant kind of conversation.
Usable space.
Again, this one is one that Adam has brought up,
Oh, is
plat
this one?
amendments and existing subdivisions.
This one I think is the highest priority.
So explain this.
So what's happening, and we have had
Why?
several developers that keep coming in, is
We have a lot to have.
Yes.
what happens is you'll develop your lot, sell it to your kid. And your original plan was to keep you at 1 acre for yourself, because that was gonna be where home was gonna be. The economy has changed that, where now you can sell your home and move somewhere completely different, and become filthy rich for just leaving that 1 acre. Which is causing us to continually re-look at it. We had one just the other day that went from, it was one of Blade Hamilton's last votes. We basically, I remember this one well because it was me that pushed it on this. And the whole decision was on, do we go 8 units or 9 units? We set it at 8. And then one of those 8 units was an acre. And then they just recently came in and asked to go down now to two halves.
so it does make sense now, kind of. But that developer, and you can look, and I asked him in the meeting, he has rezoned he has re-subdivided 4 separate times over time throughout the county to us. And to me, I think once you subdivide, you're subdivided.
So I think a better example is we had, remember that one neighborhood where they were 1 acre lots? And the lady bought 2 neighbors' houses because she wanted to do flag lots because she would make more. And so it killed the fill of the neighborhood because here's the neighborhood subdivision had a fill. They had a certain type of neighborhood. But what we have right now is we have nothing to protect the fill of that.
And we've talked about it several times, right? It's the integrity of.
Correct. And a concern of mine is that this is going to, like, we solved that one on 64 with flag lots.
You changed the flag lot, yeah.
But my concern is money makes people get more creative. And so you can now go buy 2 of those half acres, certain ones. I live next to 3 half acres, we sit right next to them. They're inside a Rose Creek master plan that has a certain number of lots. It is 8.25. All they would have to do, and they've even asked, some people have asked.
They've asked, oh yeah.
Can I just subdivide these in half? The city now, in my opinion, is new road cuts, no betterments in the city for that. And we've now so degraded our road infrastructure just to get an extra 1 lot. And so to me, this should be one of those immediate, which ties into the 8.25 in my mind.
That we were working on.
Because the 8.25, if we approve it, which we do need to get back in. But if we change that, it will allow that cutting all through Rose Creek and Copper Creek on those big, nice lots that were great, and everybody still loves them, but if you can sell it and make a ton of money, people's visions change.
I agree with you a little bit, but for me, it's zoning. I mean, we just gotta protect the zone, do better at protecting the zoning that's there. They can't subdivide anymore.
But the zone, but that's not it. The zone's already applied, so in my same subdivision, I'm not
Yeah,
kidding.
like
It's 8.25 right now.
Yeah.
If we allow it to go back in, those 3 half acres, they could come in and ask for legally. They don't have to rezone anything. They could walk right in. Because I've toyed with the idea, bought them myself.
Oh, yeah.
And they could just split those 3 half acres right in half and comply with 8.25, and they're happy like they were last year.
I just don't get how you
And there's nothing we
can
can stop.
subdivide anymore if the zoning is there. And then, I mean, until when? Like when, like 20 years, 30
But
years?
I think that's the question is, how do we protect the integrity of a subdivision or a neighborhood if we have 50 people move in expecting one product, then all of a sudden they're realizing I can make a quick buck and destroy the feel of this neighborhood very quickly.
And that's even the deal that the city has made on some of these, right? So go look at Danzy's, right?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a
This
perfect
part
example.
This part needs to be
30
less
lots.
dense, larger lots,
Yeah.
feathered in, et cetera. Well, that's the intent when we
And we're
set it
saying
out.
no 28 lots.
The
And they're like,
impact
oh,
to
about
the city,
30.
with whether it's roads, sewer, power, et cetera, if you're buying a home in that area, you're buying the whole plan, right? So this is coming back to my integrity, we need to protect the integrity of what each of those people bought, not just the one.
That's my
Because
concern.
what
like
I
a
do,
middle
what I
ground.
do on my property affects the guy next door,
Oh, yeah.
the guy 5 houses.
And that's
So as part of this
exactly.
overall approved project, I think that's more the point.
That's my point, is if we've done an official subdivision action, that,
Because it's part of a bigger
because
project.
it was part of a bigger project, it shouldn't be allowed to be subdivided anymore after that. Because that,
Depends on the size.
It's a very aggressive policy. You're essentially saying you're gonna prohibit all future subdivision amendments. I think we will really be illegal.
Yeah.
If the underlying zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance allows further subdivision, and you're creating a tool to say no, that feels like we're on a thin ice.
so, well, I'll use Rose Creek, and I'm not even gonna use my side, I'm gonna use your side of Rose Creek. There's tons of 1 acre lots that they have horses on it right now. And that pressure will continue as their neighbors don't like the horses. And as they realize that now I can turn my 2 lots into some big acreage up in Idaho, that pressure is going to happen. And it's on the PUDs that we're gonna experience it. And those ones that were approved back in the county, which is a lot of the foundational principles of what Herriman was built around, the open space contract. So that's my concern. I know it's aggressive, but there,
Is there a desire to protect the subdivision's fill, or is the I mean, because obviously there's differing opinions, or is the idea, we're okay with allowing them to subdivide as much as they want, as long as it fits the overlaying zones?
To me, it's
There's like
to
a happy
reduce that
medium there,
aggressiveness,
you
why
know?
don't you just say,
And that's what I think we're trying to figure out, is there a balance between that? Because obviously, I mean, I'm looking at it from, there's still some individuals that are on 2-3 acres, that is because they've been here forever, that's their farm. They own all the acres.
I don't think
but
those
they-
ones we're talking about.
the ones I'm
But it
talking
can't
about,
be-
and I think there is a way to do this, that is less
Flag lots
aggressive.
behind them is the only
Tied
way
to
they
the
can do it.
plat. So if you wanna subdivide further, and you need to get every lot in that subdivision. So in my sub,
It's part of the plat of the
by,
whole plat.
that
I mean, that
everyone
they
has
do
to
that.
now
It's in our
sign off on
announcement.
it. And I'm only talking at that subdivision level. I'm not saying if you went out to the county and you had 5 acres and you got a building permit. Totally get that.
Do-
I'm talking
do-
the PUD subdivisions, cause I think that would solve that, in that same one we had last
Do you
week, you'd have to have 9 signatures.
philosophy though is saying that you're essentially wanting to freeze everything in time. And generally speaking, that does seem like it's a healthy approach trying to manage your.
Can we maybe do some research to see if there's ways to protect some subdivisions and things like that? And just see maybe what some other cities have thought about and done and to protect.
That's a very aggressive.
Because the thing is it's not, it's the loopholes we wanna cut out, not the, okay, this one, yeah, we wanna give you the right to be able to do with your property, but it's like, yeah, if you have third acre, half acre, third acre, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm zoned, I could do 10.1 acres just because of where I am, and so I'm gonna put 8 homes here.
When we went through all
That's
that,
where the
I think
fear is
first
sometimes.
thing-
That is a very.
But Mike, I think what our issue is when we went through all this effort to get the diversity, and then as soon as we finish and get done with dealing with the developers, immediately the residents can come in and just throw that all away. And that, I think, is the concern that we're seeing. I don't know if there's a right way to do it, if there's a way to do it at all.
Well, we'll certainly do some research on it.
Okay.
I think that this is.
An easy sell.
I will tell you, at least with the items up there, calculating open space, I think is something that needs to be key. If we wanna be able to get programmable space in and not just keep getting, oh yeah, we have
The 2 feet between.
a huge grade here, we can't do anything with it. Yeah, we have a ravine here, we can't do anything with it, but look, that's the open space. And so I think trying to figure out how to better get programmable open space
Programmable.
is probably
On a
key.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would also probably recommend single family and multifamily design criteria, probably.
I do like that as well. And the other one is parking requirements specifically for higher density and commercial. At least those 3 are the ones that stand out to me. And then the research on the plat amendment and existing for commercial and higher density.
What were all 3 that you said though?
So I said calculating
Calculating
open
open
space,
space.
to try to get more programmable open space parking requirements and design, and then single family design. Where those three-
I would like,
Single family and multifamily.
no, I agree, I would still like a little research on the.
Yeah, we
Oh,
will do
no,
that.
no, that's the 4th, it's just
Yeah.
research phase. But are there any others that we wanna bring up while we're talking?
Yeah, are there others that we're not thinking about?
I say it all the time.
So,
I say it all the time, but I think, and I don't know what section it would be, but since the council is here, I think we need to focus on code enforcement.
Oh, yeah.
Because we all have made certain rules, and then we expect people to be adults about it. And I think we need to meet with our,
That was your first problem.
we need to meet with our code enforcement and see where he's struggling, or she is struggling.
So he's coming to your
enforcing
meeting
the
next
rules.
week to present the plan.
But I think there are several areas where the citizen that is violating that code should pay steeply to justify more code enforcement people. Because what I'm noticing, and I'll just use my subdivision because they're developing right next to us. The code enforcement, they're reaching out, they're trying to get code enforcement out there to fix it. But you have people that are violating things in every one of our ordinance, you can name it, just in
but there's not enough force to make it happen. And I think we need to make sure our community stays the way we all envision. It's always good to have a vision, but you have to have trust and verification at the same time. That's what code enforcement is. So,
Yeah, so he's gonna present to the planning commission, their work meeting next week, then we can have him come to the council, a council work meeting if you guys want.
So I agree, the same, like what we balance in our conversations
Right.
is, yes, we need enforcement, but we still need to be an inviting community. My moved to Riverton originally, my very first encounter with the city was an overactive water enforcement person that my sprinklers were on a minute past 10 a.m. to water like grass seed, and I had to go down to the courthouse and plead my case in front of the judge for why this fine was ridiculous. I said this was my welcome to Riverton, right? And so
You moved there?
That's what we have. Wow. That's what we. And they were like, all the city staff were just, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me, right? They deal with all of that, but that's what we have to be careful with that balance. Absolutely, we keep standards. Got basketball just laying out in the street, and there's somebody in my neighborhood living in a trailer, right? That kind of stuff.
that's what I'm talking about. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about stupid ones, I'm talking about.
We need to actually enforce violations. But we can't keep sending a meter maid out every single time. I'm sure that grass is
Absolutely.
still on.
Right.
Absolutely.
Not worried about.
One other thought that came up in the APA conference in San Francisco that I thought was interesting was the concept of broadband and increasing speeds of internet. So I bring that up because as we're building the city now, it may allow us to have easier ways to bring in faster internet. Because they talked about how it increases income and it increases offices and companies that come into the city. And so it's an interesting topic there, but now is the time where we may have options. It looks like one on the side. So, but if there's nothing else.
I made a motion.
Jared made a motion to adjourn. Been second. All in favor? Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. No, this is, it's Fred's birthday.
Oh.
So just so you know, one thing are a great pleasure to have.
Where's Adam?
This is how we spend his birthday. I'm just telling you, it sucks. No. And you guys made it wonderful for us. And we have a birthday cake over here.
Did you see it, Brett?
Over here.
Happy birthday, let's sing.
I've seen it, Tammy, out of her own pocket, bought me a birthday cake.
Adam is the neighbor?
So you're bigger.
No, I call him, but that was like,
Oh,